Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, what more can we do to solve our homelessness problem? Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Maddock. On any given day in Hawaii, there are at least 6,300 homeless people living in our parks, our streets, and our shelters. Our state has the highest number of homeless per capita in the country. Some of our homeless are working families, while others fight addiction and mental illness while living without food and access to health care. But homelessness affects more than just those on the street. The tent cities tarnish our image as a tourist destination. The constant struggle between our communities and the homeless costs taxpayer dollars and are a distraction to government services. What more can we do to solve our homelessness problem? We invite you to join our conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Now to our panel. Brandy Menino is the Chief Executive Officer for Hope Services Hawaii, Inc., a Hawaii Island shelter. Prior to that, she worked for nearly a decade developing and implementing homeless programs for the Roman Catholic Church. Chulan Schubert-Kwok is the president of the Chinatown Business and Community Association. She has worked with businesses in Chinatown to clean up the area and help the homeless. Joy Rucker is the Director of Community Services for Waikiki Health and oversees the Next Step Shelter in Kaka'ako. She also oversees the Mobile Medical Outreach Services program for the shelter. Dr. Chad Koyanagi is a community psychiatrist at Castle Medical Center and at the Institute of Human Services. He is a board member of Mental Health America, Hawaii. Welcome all. Thank you for joining us tonight. Joy, if we could start with you, let's just throw out this question. Why should everyone care about the homeless in our state?
Well, I think if you care about, all of us pay a price. So we pay a price in taxes, we pay a price on how much our medical care costs, how much the jails, institutions cost. And people that are homeless are high-end users of those services, so it affects everyone. And then the second is just as a community, we should care about people that are unsheltered. I mean, I think people deserve housing.
Chulan, you are in an area of our state that sees a high concentration of the homeless in Chinatown. Does it affect businesses?
Definitely. It is very difficult for years. And I think because Chinese people and immigrant people who run businesses, they are so busy trying to make a living, they don't have the time to really deal with a lot of the social issues. They look to government and also community services to deal with this problem. And it's been a losing battle. It's here today, next street, so it's never gone. And on any given day, we have between 150 to 250 homeless people. And by about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the evening, all the sidewalks are taken up and they are all sleeping there. And we feel very sorry for them. We also feel like having River of Life in Chinatown do draw them more to Chinatown, and then they feed them 3 days a week. I mean, 3 days a day, 3 times a day, 5 days a week. So you have the food there, but they don't provide bathroom facilities when they're not feeding them. So we become the bathrooms.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about a little while ago, the governor tried to sort of move people towards, or rather away from feeding the homeless at parks and directing that towards shelters. Has there been any change in terms of where meal services are provided to the homeless, and should there be any changes? Brandy, can you speak to the Big Island? How are people handling the problem there in terms of that?
I think certainly at that time when the governor was encouraging our pantry providers and groups who are providing meals on the streets or at parks, was really encouraging them to partner up with nonprofits like ourselves to gear them towards our resource center in Kailua Kona or the shelters. So there is certainly a direction and a movement community-wide to actually do that and make that change. Did I see changes? Probably not. I think the attitudes and awareness of feeding in the park became more, that issue came a higher awareness, but certainly I don't think that changed anything.
Should we change where meals are provided? Chad, any thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, emergency shelters like IHS, Institute for Human Services, and Next Steps serve meals. For the most part, I support well-meaning people serving homeless people meals. Sometimes it can be counterproductive, and when certain service providers are trying to get them to go to a place where there's services connected with those meals, rather than just handing out meals in the park, and can sometimes subtly undermine efforts of outreach workers or mental health programs to get homeless people to go to places where they can get medical care and psychiatric care and addiction care also.
Any thoughts on that in terms of, is there a better method towards getting people to get to shelters by concentrating the food services there?
I think you'll get some people. When we know of a church that might be feeding people, we'll go down and we'll do outreach during that time to make sure that people are aware of our services. So I don't really think that, like you were saying, that service providers are doing as much as they can. But part of the problem is there's nowhere for people to go. So even if we get people into shelter, into transitional housing, there's no housing on the other end. So shelters are full, transitional housing programs are full, and so we have these people that have nowhere to go.
Are shelters full? Because I sometimes hear shelters aren't necessarily full, but there might be groups within the homeless community that do not want to abide by the rules of shelters. Do we have full shelters?
You know, on any given night, I think, you know, when it rains in the winter, we tend to be more full. I do think that we don't have a system that addresses homeless people in different groups. We have a system for the homeless, not the most chronically homeless. All the homeless services are basically the same. So there is no flexibility, like you were talking about. The criteria does not meet the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. We have limited options for them. And so I think that's why we see so many chronically homeless people, because we're not offering them the options that could work for them.
One of those options being, as you spoke of earlier, the Waikiki Health Center, for example, people are allowed to drink as long as it's not in a disruptive manner. Is that a big issue for a lot of homeless? Is that if there are rules around drinking, say that they don't want to participate in that shelter?
Yes, yeah. And, you know, it is the behavior that's an issue. In other shelters, I know you cannot, you can't come in loaded, you can't use drugs. We try not to have that rule, but what we need is, like, why Housing First will be such a great model for some people is they won't have to go into shelter. They won't have to go into transitional housing. They will go right into housing. And as long as they're able to pay their rent and be a neighbor, a good tenant, they can drink in their house.
All right, let's talk about Housing First. Some viewers might not be aware of this program. Chad, could you run over what's happening with Housing First here in the state?
So there was recently a great development that the state of Hawaii applied for a SAMHSA grant and was one of a dozen or so states to receive this multi-million-dollar funding. And the Housing First model basically targets some of the chronically mentally ill and addicted folks who are chronically homeless. It costs the system tons of money and provides them a place to stay along with services. In this case, it's high-intensity case management team was called an ACT team, Assertive Community Treatment. And their model is based on the model from Pathways to Housing, which is from New York City. And so last week, Dr. Samberas from Pathways came to Hawaii, talked to a whole bunch of homeless providers. Governor was there, and this will be this Housing First model will successfully house about 100 folks over the next few years, and hopefully be the model by which most other housing programs, homeless programs will follow.
Chilan, is this good news for the Chinatown community?
It is really good news because I think it takes away the stigma. It's like we house people, we take care of them, we're compassionate, we get them off our streets, we're helping everyone. Because homelessness in Chinatown, anywhere, hurts everybody. And then we want to help them get off the street. And hopefully when you have the shelter, you're emotionally more stable and you can then seek other services.
You'd like to see some of the homeless resources shifted to Iwilei along with the Housing First, sort of a nexus of resources for homeless.
I think it will be a wonderful center for rehab, for training, job training, everywhere close by. We have the Kakao, down there you have the kitchen that I believe Pacific Gateway has a kitchen there that they train people. And then you have IHS. I really think it's a wonderful area, especially when I hear that maybe the city is looking at getting bathrooms there and also showers and
Take some of the pressure
and
off
all
of
of that,
Chinatown.
urban centers to really help the working poor get off the street and also help the chemical dependent folks off the streets.
Brandy, the Big Island's already had to take some initiatives in terms of this type of housing program. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we started, I think, out of need and desperation, looked at the Housing First model some years ago. We have less resources on the neighbor islands, and especially on the Big Island, not enough shelter beds, not enough transitional units. So we looked at other models years ago and found the Housing First model as an opportunity for us to kind of take action. And really what it was make a concerted effort to partner with private landlords and realtors and working with them as another client. Yeah, not just those who were working on the streets, but both catering to the landlord or to the property manager and just making sure that we follow through. So we really worked with one landlord in particular years ago, and she kind of set that tone of she would take a risk with us if we would refer green and clean tenants, meaning if we could demonstrate that our tenants that we would refer would pay their rent on time and clean, meaning that they would be keep the unit clean, but also their nose clean. If she didn't hear about them, then they're good tenants to her.
How easy is that type of person to find in the homeless community? Is that a challenge? Or?
It is a challenge. I think it's that development of relationships with private landlords and then maintaining those relationships. Yeah, so you need the flexibility to be able to do that. So say you have a tenant that that may break something in their unit beyond the deposit amount, to have side undiscretionary funds that could help do minor repairs. We've also had staff that went out and helped do some minor repairs, whether it's painting or cleaning of the unit when a tenant left or abandoned the unit. So it's really those types of follow through that's beyond our social work that the landlord really likes, because they would take a risk with any tenant that they would put into their unit. So we put that out there that we would be available to them. We give them a 24-hour number that they can call us. I'll give them my cell number. And really, that's how we started that development, is really trying to follow through, say that we are committed and willing to work with you if you rent to our tenants. Because a lot of the people that we're referring have no credit history, poor credit history, criminal background history, so they already have all these challenges, and on their own, they're not able to rent. So they really need another partner, a nonprofit, or another individual to advocate for them, to kind of stick their necks out of I've worked with them, they've been in our program, their unit, when we do inspections, are immaculate. So we kind of just do that as our way of engaging with new landlords.
To get a landlord to agree to do this, you basically need the state government or a state organization saying, we'll back this person, we'll guarantee, and guarantee the rent, right? We're getting a lot of questions. Let's see, from Michael on Twitter, what happened to buying plane tickets? Wouldn't it help those that want to get back to family and friends? Do any of you support plane tickets, that concept? Joy?
I don't know that that's really the answer. you know, people say that people get plane tickets to come to Hawaii. So
Do any of you believe that that happened?
Yes.
Yes.
You do.
Yes.
That does happen.
That
So that's
happens, yes.
fact, huh?
Yes.
I mean, I worked in the mainland. I don't know of any agency. I never worked with an agency, ever heard of one that gave someone a one-way ticket to Hawaii to be homeless.
Well, let's talk about that, Chad. Have you actually experienced someone who got that ticket?
I've heard of multiple times, and I've seen multiple times where patients end up, they get put on a one-way ticket and they go straight from the airport to the emergency room, and they're suicidal and they need housing and they need to be admitted.
Is this a family buying that person a ticket, a state agency elsewhere?
It's happened with both families and with social service agencies.
And
That's
you've
what I heard, yeah.
you've experienced that on the Big
We have
Island?
the same as well. I have an example of the taxi driver at the airport calling that someone just came from the state and has nowhere to go. And
But
then
are they doing that on their own volition, or someone is sending them? That's the question. You believe
There's
someone's
both,
sending-
yeah.
There's both.
And I think it's similar to what people have talked about here, that if someone has family, if somebody has ties in a community. So I'm sure like in Oakland, California, they have this agency called Travel Aid. So if people have someone on the other end or some connection, then yeah, they'll help them get there. So I think that probably happens a lot, but just to give a ticket, I mean, I don't know, I don't know how do you answer to your funders for that,
But perhaps that person is presenting to that other state agency.
That they
I
have,
and
yes.
the reality is sadly different. So, but do any of you here, getting back to Michael's question, do any of you support the concept of providing tickets to people back to their place of origin, back to a certain state? Would any of you see that
I
as a
would
good?
say it's one of the options is to lessen our population and then reserve some of the funding, some of the resources to our own folks, because these are visitors. They're not really permanently our folks, so they're actually sapping our resources. So if they can be voluntarily asked to leave, I support that. And if we can get funding to send them back, sure.
Brandy, your thoughts on that?
I think the concept is in good direction, but I think the challenge is implementing something like that, because once you open that floodgates, then they'll hear, oh, they're going to give me a ticket back home. I'm just going to come here to travel, here and then on Hawaii's dime, be able to go back home.
It could open a Pandora's box.
Yes.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
What about Chad? What are your thoughts
I
on that?
support returning folks to the mainland if they have family there, established histories there. I once talked to a psychiatrist from California, and I was complaining to him about all the people who came from California on one-way tickets to Hawaii, and he said, you have no idea how many Greyhound therapy patients we get. So you have to be very careful about who you send back and where you send them back to, because they might have just been, the state that they came from previously might have been the recipient of a one-way ticket or a Greyhound ticket from another place too.
So they're just being bounced around,
Correct.
basically, with no resolution. All right, from Ren via Twitter. Would it help if you found homeless people and told them the advantages of shelter? Would that help? Do you already do that? And Joy, you were referring to that. You do,
Yeah,
right?
We do that. And I think, as we talked about before, there are maybe 600 chronically homeless people that are very visible on our streets. And they are unable and unwilling to be in a shelter environment. So those folks are the people that we're talking about for Housing First, that they need to go directly into housing. And so we've started, I was part of the boot camp. Waikiki Health was part of the Housing First boot camp, and we started it in October. And what it did was look at the entire system that is currently operating in Hawaii for homeless people, and it's a fragmented system. So we were able to identify all the gaps and then try and create a system that is, so if you come in this way, you're going to be followed all the way through to get to housing. And the Housing First model, I mean, we've done this without the future funding, SAMPs and all this, we've housed 136 people chronically homeless from October now. That's up 26% of what we were doing prior to the Housing First boot camp. And this is without rental subsidies, without this new money coming, but this is with a much more coordinated effort and using an assessment tool that we've all agreed upon that gives you the highest ranking people, and then you match them with the services in the housing. So people don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to be housed. And I think that's part of the problem with the current system. People have to jump through too many hoops and they're unable to do it.
All right, let's get to this comment from Kalia in Waikiki. There should be homeless parks with security in place that utilize the state's vacant, undeveloped lands. It would be inexpensive. The homeless without family here should be given tickets back home, what we spoke to earlier. Any thoughts on the concept of a homeless park? I've heard people talk about Sand Island being turned into this.
Actually, I also feel like we have city garages empty at night, and recently we have a lot of rain. A lot of folks are having a hard time. I've suggested that why don't we open our city garages nighttime, put in some portable parties, and then clean it up in the morning so people have a warm place to sleep away from the rain. And also under our freeway, we can chain off some area, and it's close to where they want to go, and we can keep it clean. And security is something that is temporary but inexpensive to fix.
Chad, do you support the concept of using sort of open spaces or state-owned spaces?
So the key word Shulan mentioned is temporary. So these are all temporary measures. IHS is temporary. I think Next Steps is temporary. Everyone in the homeless field believes that permanent housing, housing first, is the end-all solution to dealing with homeless folks.
What about you, Brenda? Any thoughts on that? The Big Island, of course, has a lot more space available than Oahu does.
Yeah, I think there's a risk factor in open spaces. I think that would be a challenge, but also it's also a temporary measure, like Dr. Chad had mentioned, and really our efforts have been focused on permanent housing, getting them straight out of the streets and into their own place.
As exciting as Housing First sounds, is there the risk that for every person that you take into that program, get settled, make positive changes, more people are coming to the state, that there's an endless supply, and how will you ever answer that problem? It's a bit of a depressing thought, but I mean, is that a risk in building a great program like that you will have a constant stream of people perhaps attracted to Hawaii because of good programs? Any thoughts on that?
I don't think, I've never heard that. And actually the Pathways to Housing model, which is in New York City and has been adopted in at least 8 or 10 other major cities, I've never heard of any of those programs saying that more people are attracted to those cities and end up going there just for the housing first. And these are the chronically homeless, and so these are people who are quite incapacitated and wouldn't have the wherewithal to say, Hawaii is a great program, I'm going to get a plane ticket there.
But in the terms of the sense that Hawaii does seem to have a growing sort of stream of people coming in, can we ever sort of solve this problem here?
I think, you have to be chronically homeless to be enrolled into the Housing First to begin with. So there would be some, when the money is supporting this person to pay the rent, and also some support services. So there's some monitoring going on. And I think if somebody off the street and say, oh, I'm going to get into this Housing First, I don't have to pay rent, I can live, I don't think that will work. And it will kind of self-monitor and self-police itself.
People have to pay rent. It's 30% of their income. And so most people are on some sort of disability.
So they put their disability towards their rent.
So it's 30% of that. I mean, I think there are the chronically homeless, there are the working poor, and
families.
And what Honolulu needs is, low-income housing. I mean, we say we have affordable, but not 50% of the medium income is not affordable if you're only making minimum wage. So there are a number of people that if there was decent, affordable housing, they could be housed. They could.
That's a comment from Sam on Twitter. find some way to have more respectable, affordable housing. Of course, that's been a challenge for Hawaii for a
Right.
long time. The Big Island, there are some areas that are attractive because of a lower cost of living than Oahu, yet you're still seeing a homeless problem. Is it that it's in the more expensive areas to live? What sort of demographics are involved on the Big Island?
Homelessness is actually across our island. It's concentrated, more visible perhaps in our towns, which is in downtown Hilo, in our Puna areas, in Kailua Kona. I think the challenge is, while we embrace the housing first for the chronically homeless, that is not the only strategy that we must take to solve homelessness. You know, building additional affordable housing units certainly has helped decrease our family homelessness on the Kailua Kona side with new inventory, with the partnership and the development of county housing. We're able to bring on 76 two-bedroom apartment units, and there's a third phase that the county is building. So it certainly is helping in that direction, but like you said, it's going to be without affordable housing, whether it's new projects or a rental subsidy of some sort, people are not going to be able to afford housing in Hawaii. Even if Hilo or Puna areas are cheaper than other areas, it's still unaffordable to the 18-year-old coming out of high school.
And it's always going to drive a homeless issue for people. From Dolores and Ainahaina, many shelters are closed during the day and only open at night. Shelters should be open for more than places to sleep. Where are the homeless supposed to go during the day? I got to visit Next Step and I noticed that that is closed during the day, if I'm correct. What is the thinking behind that? Can you tell us?
Well, it's really a capacity issue and funding. We don't have enough funding to fund the shelter 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We do now have staff that are there during the day, so we have people coming back and getting services instead of just hanging out and at the parks. But it's a capacity issue.
On the Big Island, are there similar issues in terms of the shelters?
Yeah, there's two emergency shelters. One in Hilo is staffed 24/7, and just like how she experienced it at their shelter, our Kona shelter is only open from 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. Capacity and funding and resources is an issue, but we also looked at that as an opportunity for the individuals to be out looking for work, if they're employable, to be going to treatment, if that's where they're headed, if to seek mental health care.
Let's talk about treatment for a second. Chad, how hard is it to get homeless people to get medical treatment, take their medications? How big of a challenge is it?
Probably for the majority of folks who are not high in the spectrum of severe mental illness or severe addiction, you can offer services at a shelter, and probably most of them would come. The trick is getting the chronically homeless folks who don't realize they're mentally ill, don't know the sore on their leg is a sign of diabetes. So this housing first model, rather than expecting these folks to seek care and stabilize on medications and take medication when they don't believe they're mentally ill as a prerequisite for housing, it provides them the housing first, and in which case some of their medical issues and mental stability improve just by having a safe shelter every night. And it adds on as a major component the ACT team, which has a nurse, a psychiatrist, medical doctor if necessary, addiction counselors, rehabilitation specialists. So it all, and the treatment team is mobile and goes to the patient's apartment if necessary. It is not tied to a specific location or shelter.
All right. Via email, a lot of resources being dumped into homeless is reactive. Why don't we put more resources into finding out why these people are homeless and work on preventative programs? Could it be Hawaii's low income, are having a hard time making rent? We've talked about affordable housing, and I believe the Housing First is meant as a preventative program in a sense, right? Getting people into housing so that they can then be taken care of before they really drop through the cracks.
Yeah.
To answer that problem. This is a long comment, I want to read it. An exemption currently exists that allows charitable organizations to feed the homeless without installing certified kitchen infrastructure. The Department of Health has proposed new rules that eliminate the exemption from certified kitchens for those that feed the homeless. Are homeless providers prepared to shoulder the cost of commercial infrastructure in their shelters? And if not, how will they propose to implement congregate feeding that is so necessary in certain types of shelters? Is this an issue that any of you are watching in terms of the certification of kitchens? Is this being talked about?
Really, like you know, the governor said, let's not feed them. And then when Mark Alexander was our homeless coordinator, he really pushed for that idea. And it's a good idea, but we still find church people still feeding in our Sun Yat-sen Park, in our park, because they feel like this is what their church want to do. And now who's going to go and police and say, is the food coming from a certified kitchen or not? People look at it as a compassionate, you know.
So in terms of enforcement,
no,
people don't
that's
expect
no,
the enforcement to
no.
be that strict.
So-
All right. For those of you who are joining us tonight, we are discussing what we can do to solve our homeless problem. We invite you to join the conversation by calling, emailing, or tweeting your questions and comments. Call 973-1000 on Oahu and 800-283-4847 from the neighbor islands. Here's a comment from the Island Guy on Twitter. First and foremost, no Hawaiian should be homeless no matter what the situation is. It's the responsibility of all to fix it. And Claire responds on Twitter, shouldn't it be no one, not just no Hawaiian? This touches on an issue we were speaking about briefly before the show, in which we were talking about different communities in Hawaii are represented in a different fashion in our homeless community, with, I believe, Caucasian or Haole and Native Hawaiian, part Hawaiian being heavily represented. The Asian community is somewhat underrepresented in homeless numbers.
Yeah.
Is there something we can learn from how perhaps these issues are being dealt with in the Asian community?
Really, Maria, is that a lot of Asian families look after their own, and then they feel like it's their duty and responsibility to take care of their own sibling or their own children, even if they were adult, unable to go out and get a job and have some emotional problem. And I think that's the heavy responsibility on the part of the family to look after each other. And the other part is, I think there's the embarrassment. If you don't look after your own kind, why have a family? You need to look after your own kind.
And of course, a lot of different communities in Hawaii have families that are similar and take care of their own, but perhaps there is, in your experience, perhaps more family support in Hawaii amongst people falling into the same category of social problems? Chad, what's been your experience with this?
From my work in the hospital, I've noticed that there are many Asian families who, like Shulan was saying, they kind of own the problem for a longer period of time. Not necessarily the better thing, but sometimes you find this 35-year-old person with undiagnosed schizophrenia who's been living in their household for 15 years with florid symptoms of hallucinations, and the family lets them live in their garage and they don't bother anyone. And when I see them, they've been ill for a long period of time, and eventually there will come a point when the family can't deal with them anymore, and there's just a longer delay and a longer amount of stuff that the family can tolerate before they end up kicking them out of the house or giving up on their mental stability.
And you found that sort of breaks down in the same way on the Big Island in terms of different ethnic groups.
Yeah, larger ethnic groups is part Hawaiian and Caucasian as well. So it's the same observation with Asians being like lesser on the streets. And share the same observation that probably that ethnic groups take on, and they live in extended homes and build more homes within their property and rooms for their extended family.
From Nicole via Twitter, how similar is elderly housing to homeless housing? Interesting question. I suppose homeless housing, you've got some more dramatic addiction issues perhaps than generally in your elderly community?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we service a lot of seniors. The population is getting older. And so it's not just young people, but I think it depends on what kind of housing you develop. If you develop permanent supportive housing, it'll look very, very similar to senior housing. The only difference would be the age requirement, and it would depend on how you structure services on site. Some senior citizen housing have social services. So it wouldn't be, I don't think it would be a big difference except for the age.
From Shelley via email, homeless individuals have reported that police slash their tents. What type of sensitivity training is HPD provided? Chad, you interact with HPD in terms of the homeless situation. What kind of interactions do you witness?
I've never heard of police slashing tents. I think the police have a huge responsibility to enforce the laws and
And a heavy burden on this
and
front.
It's huge, and they deal with all sorts of stuff that and me as a psychiatrist probably doesn't even see on a day-to-day basis. So they're doing the best that they can. They get training from Department of Health sometimes, and I know they have several police psychologists who try to provide some training to them. There's actually a model program on Maui now. After they got a federal grant, the Maui Police Department is working with Dr. Rampersand from the Department of Health, and they're started this model called the CIT model, which is based out of a Memphis model, where police get extensive training in dealing with homeless, mentally ill folks, and it leads to better outcomes, better assessment and interventions when it comes to community crises and suicidal patients, patients who are unstable in the community, and it's a model that Honolulu should look at.
So when a police officer brings a homeless individual with mental issues into an emergency room that you're at, what then happens? What's the next step?
So the next step would be gathering all the data that what happened at the incident. By definition, these folks would have been deemed imminently dangerous to self or others by the police and the police psychologist. So based on our assessment, whether the person has addiction or mental illness or dementia, then we would decide whether the person needed admission to the hospital. Sometimes it turns out they might be behaviorally challenged because of a medical problem that's undiagnosed, or dementia. Some people, after asking questions, we find out they don't need to be in the hospital. And there's a bunch of folks who are so chronically coming in under these circumstances that after a while we don't admit them anymore because they never follow through with the treatment that's offered to them.
So basically everyone kind of gives up hope.
For the ones that are chronically coming in under this MH1 provision, the vast majority we try to help, but there's a few people who are so chronic and so resistant to mainstream treatments that they don't benefit from coming into the hospital.
Could you explain MH1?
So MH1 is the state statute that allows the director of the Department of Health to instruct the police to take patients who are deemed imminently dangerous to self or others to an emergency room, usually Queens or Castle or sometimes Tripler. And at that point, there's a mental health evaluation, and the hospitals will admit or discharge folks at their discretion.
All right. From Debbie from Chinatown, what are the military branches doing to help the retired soldiers on the street? Veterans do represent, in all of our states, right, are heavily represented because of trauma and other issues. In terms of support that you guys see for veterans, is it enough?
I don't think it's enough, but it certainly is a lot more than other people have access to, because the VA has VASH vouchers. They have housing for people that are vets. I mean, IHS just opened up a house for vets. So they have a lot of resources so that vets can access.
We have the similar VASH voucher that she travels from Oahu to the neighbor islands, which is the rental subsidy specifically for the veterans. Certainly not enough resources, but certainly more than what they had 5 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. Jenny on Maui, I'm wondering if people travel to Hawaii because they are homeless and it's a good climate to live in, or do these people grow up here and become homeless? Brandy, maybe I can actually sort of direct that question towards you because you had talked about people coming from plains. Do you find that Hawaii's sort of kind and gentle weather exacerbates the homeless problem in some sense?
Sure, I think there's a website, I hear about it all the time when I'm in Kona, that someone can put homeless in Hawaii and it'll pop up, Kailua Kona will pop up on as the Google item or website. Is it the majority of our homeless? Certainly not. It's still the lifetime residents who's been there quite a while.
And experiencing tough times.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we're seeing generational homelessness now, that the parents have been homeless and now they're having their children who are 18, 19, and they're homeless. So it's generational.
It's somewhat devastating to see that.
Yeah.
From Blaine on Twitter, does the homeless shelter provide education for kids? Actually, speaking of that.
Kids have to go to school. So, and then we provide tutoring, homework, tutoring after school. but kids have to go to school.
But there's support at the shelter.
Yes.
From Tom, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Our project in Kona at Uluvini, we partnered with, actually the school outreached to us, Kealakehi, where they provide after-school tutoring at the transitional site. We reached out to our Catholic parishioners, and after tutoring is done, they help do a healthy snack. They do tutoring as well. And then Youth with a Mission, another organization, plays with them. So they created like a routine at the transitional housing site for the kids so that they're supported, offer spring break activities as well as summer enrichment programs. So
Lessen some of the trauma that might be associated
Right.
with.
Try to normalize their lives.
Right, and another thing that we tried to do, we partnered with the county, is creating financial empowerment centers. So when you mentioned earlier about prevention, one of the things that we need to do so that we can address generational homelessness is to teach them and educate them about financial literacy and about credit, about budgeting, about money, and how to handle money.
Chilan, during the recession when there were cuts to mental health services, did you actually sort of see the result of that on the streets of Chinatown?
I think it's all over. And then Chinatown especially, we see more of that. And we're very happy that in Chinatown, we do have a shelter there called Safe Haven. And over time, they've really treated close to 181 people off chemical dependency, about 72 people off the street into permanent housing. So their program really works because they specialize in mental health and also in chemical dependency.
So there are solutions to these issues if people are engaged in programs that work.
Yeah.
Is there a place in our community for stable, healthy people who choose to live outdoors? From Tom via Cover It Live. Any thoughts on that? I suppose for some people there's a question of the freedom of being able to live where one wants to live. Any thoughts on that? I mean, is there a place in society for that? Of course, then there's the issue of who do the parks belong to, the public or people who choose to reside in them?
Yeah. There were a few individuals in Chinatown like that, and they kind of sprouted that as their choice to be independent and why can't I live in wherever I want. And of course, they damage the environment because they use a bucket and they dump it into a river and then they took up space and they kind of flunked their lifestyle on the general public. And we've had conversations with them and they said, hey, I get my Social Security, I don't want to pay rent, I'd rather live on the street and I want to use my money for drugs. And they're very sober people, except when they take hits, and that's their choice.
In terms of a lifestyle choice. From Laura via Twitter, how many are working homeless on Oahu? Do they deserve help like chronic homeless, or do they just need to work harder? I suppose her question is if the sort of people in the most chronic, perhaps addiction-based situation are getting the help, are the people who are the working homeless not? Any thoughts on that?
No, everyone is getting served. And really, for the working poor, it is about minimum wage, how much they actually get paid a week, and what the rents are.
And hopefully with the minimum wage increase, although in a market like Hawaii for housing.
It's really hard. So there are a lot of working poor people. There are a lot of people in the shelter that go to work every day. You just can't find affordable housing.
So what is the transition then for them? Do you see a transition? Do you see families leave the shelter and then it does happen?
Yes, yeah, it does. We housed 94 people last year. So people do leave, but it really takes a lot of effort to find an affordable place, or if people get a Section 8 voucher, then you'll see that landlords won't want to rent to people that have a Section 8 voucher. So this problem is so big that it needs community support, like you were saying with the landlords, people that are willing to work with nonprofit providers. If we provide the services and that we're going to be on call all the time, then take a chance and help people get housed. It's not just the service providers, it has to be business, the community, service providers. the government. It has to be a whole integrated model, because one entity cannot solve the problem.
It seems like the public right now perceives this problem really reaching a tipping point. I mean, I think a recent poll found 55% of Hawaii residents identified homelessness as getting much worse. Is that your experience sort of on the street or in the hospital? Is it getting worse right now? Are we seeing a tipping point with homelessness?
Absolutely. I think the homeless problem is so huge, and people feel like there are no tangible, effective solutions, that people are feeling helpless, and to the point where we're okay with politicians terrorizing homeless folks with sledgehammers and not
The
being
recent
too
incident of a
concerned
legislator,
about,
yes.
not being too concerned that homeless people are killing other homeless people, and I think we just lost a lot of our compassion for folks who have a lot of problems and are quite vulnerable people.
Are you seeing a lack of compassion amongst the public? Do you find that on the Big Island, or do you find there's more tolerance for the issue?
Perhaps I think more of a tolerance, but I think our community cares about the people that are on the streets, and individuals and families, and generally want to help them get off the streets and into housing.
And of course, right now, a lot of people that are in the middle class of Hawaii are getting really squeezed in terms of increased cost of living, housing, and so are we going to see this problem rapidly accelerate and get worse in the next 5 years?
I think if we don't develop affordable housing, I mean, a lot of people work, and they just can't make ends meet, or they get an apartment and then something happens, and they're only a paycheck away from being homeless. They lose their job. I mean, it could happen to any of us.
So if you could see some action on the part of sort of city governments or the legislature, what would you like to see? Let's go around the table. Chad, what would be some real solutions and real developments?
And going back to that question about 3 questions ago about the cuts in mental health services, the cuts of about 8 or 10 years ago, when we had ACT teams and more intensive services, those were devastating to the people that I work with. So because I work at the emergency room, psychiatric hospitals, at jail and IHS, I see the same unfortunate people who have mental illness and addiction.
You'll run into the same individual repeatedly in different places.
Being homeless, getting arrested for relatively minor incidents, and ending up in the hospital, being chronically homeless, costing the system tons of money and creating countless emotional pain to this person and their family.
And so if you could see, what program would be the most important to you to see restored? What programs need to come back?
So I'd like these ACT teams. This will have the Housing First program will have an ACT team, a modified ACT team, but hopefully it'll be the nidus for other ACT teams to start and be funded by the government. And of course, low-income housing, just having more housing units built and maintained.
Chilan, what would you like to see?
A couple of steps. I think you need to take care right away of those on the streets right now, and we have to move them to temporary housing. Second step is to really help the working poor and give them vouchers, Section 8, and then long-term plan. We definitely need affordable housing. It's no brainer. We need it.
Yeah. Right, Joy.
Well, as I said before, I think it's a community, government, service providers. It's all of us have to be involved. Business has to be involved. So it has to be a integrated system, and we have to have more low-income housing, not affordable housing, because the people that are chronically homeless, if they have affordable housing, they will be off the streets. If they don't, they'll be on the streets. I mean, that's part of the problem. Why we have nowhere to offer them. So we don't have enough options for people.
Brandy, any thoughts in terms of the Big Island? What would you like to see done on the Big Island specifically?
Probably the same things that they've mentioned, our mental health care and services. We're really good at helping people move into housing. It's helping them maintain their housing, and with the partnership of the mental health providers who can maintain them in the community and in their housing in the most dignified way, which is their own place. But certainly, we notice when our resources are shrinking, we had funds available to help families who are just at that not making enough. So like a rental subsidy, or they're behind on rent for a month. with just that 1 month's rent, they're able to get back on their feet. So those types of resources certainly helped that working at-risk homeless and not fall to homelessness, and certainly building more affordable low-income housing. We certainly did that on the west side of the island in Kona for families, but we're seeing our chronic homeless numbers, our individuals, single people and our homeless numbers increasing.
All right, from John in Waikiki, what about letting some homeless become caretakers for public parks in exchange for a free place to stay and take some of the burden off of our overwhelmed city and county employees? Do any of you support any type of idea of some sort of, sort of back to work program?
We, at Next Step Shelter, we have a job training program, and we actually take care of 2 of the parks. And we're contracted through the city to clean the parks up, empty the garbage. And so people that want to apply for the job training program in the shelter, they fill out an application, and it's a 6-month training program. So I think it's a great idea. I think that hotels should consider taking people from job training programs or shelters that have skills, give them jobs at entry level, like housekeepers. I think we just haven't tapped into that resource enough.
And try to do that. From Emily via Twitter, how do you measure the success rate or rehabilitation of the homeless? Is relapse common? Chad, any thoughts on that?
Relapse is part of any chronic illness. The Pathways model, Dr. Sambaris has tons of data showing high retention rates. Approximately, I think 85% stay in his type of Housing First program for like 5 years versus, I think the comparison is treatment as usual, which is like half the success rate of being retained in housing. That's huge.
I think with a relapse, his model also, what we practice is rapidly rehousing them to another unit. If that, the housing unit doesn't work, you don't let them fall back onto the streets, you move them to another unit. So you just keep moving them.
And could that be possibly sort of a disruption might be caused in the first place? Perhaps they're not settling well into the community and it's too disruptive and you've got to take them out. Does that happen?
Yes, that happens. And I think, through the Pathways model, it's a different definition of what quality of life is and what recovery is, based on the individual. So it's not as cut and dry, oh, you're not using drugs anymore. It could be, I'm now taking my medication. I might still be using drugs, but I'm taking my medication. Or, I'm using less. So it's a very different way of measuring success based on the individual skill set.
Well, isn't the average lifespan 45 years if someone is homeless? So is it just living past sort of a very short lifspan?
If that's your goal.
Yes. Or with some quality of life, right?
Yeah, with quality of life, yeah.
All right. So if a homeless family or a homeless person wants to find services to help them out of homelessness, how and who to contact?
Lots of places that they can go. The city has a program, the state has a program, and then IHS, everywhere. They just, even calling the police, they have the resource list.
Yeah. And of course, Waikiki
Health has Caravan, which is our outreach services with our medical providers. And we have a drop-in center where people who are homeless can use our address to get their mail. That's a big issue for homeless people. You can't do anything if you don't have a mailing address.
And of course, circling back to our original question, why should people care? Waikiki, it's a big economic issue for Hawaii right now. A lot of negative press because of the concentration of homeless. Is that something that people are talking about, trying to find a solution for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And get that. A lot of letters to the editor from visitors saying that they no longer want to come here. A comment from Diana in Laie. God bless everyone on the panel and what they're trying to do about the problem. A nice way to end. We appreciate your guys' time here. Perhaps we can just end with a quick word, perhaps from our Big Island guest, in terms of, are excited about perhaps seeing the Housing First come to the island. That might be a possibility if one of the counties gets the grant, correct?
Certainly, there's a pilot project coming out that all the neighbor islands are able to respond to, which is similar to the Housing First that's being developed here, just at a smaller scale. But certainly would welcome that if we win that opportunity for the Big Island.
And perhaps we can have you all back in the future to talk about how Housing First has turned out to work for the islands and hopefully see some improvement. Thank you all for being our guests this evening. Next week on Insights, one of the lasting effects of the Great Recession has been on our older workers who saw their retirement nest eggs shrink. Some older workers have had to tap into their pool of resilience, retooling themselves and adapting their skills to compete with younger workers in today's marketplace. On the next Insights on PBS Hawaii, what role can our aging population play in Hawaii's workforce? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Malia Maddock. A hui hou.